you hand them. That way they don't have to come up. Okay. I have Brian Kaufman, the Director of IT from American Asset Trust. Brian Kaufman, come on up. Are you still here? Brian, okay. Well, I know Jacob Combs is still here. How great was he as our keynote speaker today? Let's give him another round of applause. CISO for Tandem Diabetes Care. Thank you, Jacob, for being here today. You guys don't have to come up on the stage, but if you want, you can. I have Ganjan Kal, is a Senior IT Manager at Medtronic. All right, congratulations. I would just hand them to him down here. Albert Lang is the Information Security Officer at OE Federal Credit Union. Albert, are you still here? I don't know. I don't think Albert's here. Some of these people are so important they can't stay all day, but we do know that they checked in. TJ Lingenfelter is the Head of Information Security and Compliance at TaylorMade. TJ, all right, congratulations. A round of applause for TJ. I have Amanda Martin, Information Security Manager from Jack Henry. Amanda, are you in the room? I will call these out again at the end because there was still a lot of people in the bar line. Chad Neal, SVP of Cybersecurity at Clear Lake. Chad, congratulations. Christian O'Landorf is a Senior Director of InfoSec from Sony Corp. All right, Christian, come on up. I have Kolad, I'm sure I'm not saying your name right. Kolad Ojo is Information Security Manager from Planned Parenthood of Pacific Southwest. Are you still here? Maybe not. Okay. Brittany Smith is a Security Analyst for San Diego Community Power. Oh, here she comes. She's right here. Congratulations. All right. Sam Young is the Senior Director of IT from Marshall B. Ketchum University. Sam Young? I don't think Sam Young's here. I think that was a mistake. All right, now we're to our panelists. I have Darin Andersen, who is going to moderate today. He's the CEO of NXT Robotics. So Darin, big round of applause for you. We have Rajesh Arora, who is the Vice President of Data Platform Engineering from MUFG Union Bank. And Raj, here you go. I have Rosalia. Did I say your name right this time? Rosalia, sorry about that. Hajek, Chief Information Security Officer from Topgolf Callaway Brands. Thank you so much for being here today. Gary Hayslip, who is he's a Senior Security Executive in Residence at, is it Halcyon? Halcyon, his new role. So let's give Gary a big round of applause. We have Drew Martin, who is the Chief Information Officer from Fat Brands. Congratulations, Drew, and thank you for being here today. And last but not least, Justine Phillips is from Baker McKenzie. She's a cyber attorney and on our panel as well. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to turn it over to Darin Andersen. As always, remember, if you have a question, please wait for the mic because we have a lot of people here and we have about another 150 people that are streamed in virtually. So we want to make sure everyone can hear your questions. And the panel will go for 60 minutes. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. Just because the mic has to come to you, don't keep that from letting you guys ask a question. With that being said, let's welcome our panelists.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So I just arrived back yesterday afternoon from the YADA show, which is the largest international data center show, focusing this year extensively on AI. And I told the panel I wanted to just share a little bit about that because as cybersecurity experts, this really has a big impact on where we're going. We've all been talking about AI, and inside of our organizations, we've been talking about how AI will impact us. And the impacts are significant. I think that most of us see that, this is not just a yellow light blinking, that there is a lot of things that we need to be cognizant of as we move forward, especially as cybersecurity experts. Keeping our jobs, learning how to adapt to the AI, that's a whole other discussion, but we want to set the context around our expertise as cybersecurity folks. And so 3 things that I noted is one of the biggest challenges that I see coming out of the big data increase that is directly related to AI is that the power consumption of these new AI plants is about 5 to 7 times the amount that you see in today's current standard data center. And I think with that comes a massive infrastructure attack expansion. So we always talk about attack surface and threat expansion. So there are a set of new threats that are coming around this, I'm certain about it. Because what I see is a throwback to a lot of public-private partnership that we haven't seen in a while. It reminds me of some years ago when we all started talking about this thing called information security, which we now call cybersecurity. And at that time, people were calm, but also trying to figure things out, because we realized a little after the fact that we were already behind in the fight against our adversaries, who I think we became more aware actually had agendas that didn't necessarily support our agendas. And I think you all know what I mean. Supply chain security complexities are going to be highlighted by these new AI workflows and the data sources and centers that support that. And then energy infrastructure may have some of the greatest concerns. We've been talking about SCADA protection for many, many years, 2 decades now. The first red alert was the Stuxnet threat that occurred at the nuclear plant in Iran. And I think we're going to see new concerns around this. One of the things that you see is many organizations and cities are going to be reactivating decommissioned nuclear plants. Anybody have an idea about how many nuclear plants are currently active in the United States? How many? 58. How many in China? No, actually, 50. It's like 59. I was surprised. I actually just happened to look at this week. So they have more under construction, and there's sort of 3 types of nuclear that we're going to be looking at, which is micro or mini, and then kind of this mid-level SMC, and then kind of on-site nuke, the ones that we've historically built. But needless to say, this is going to have a massive challenge, and it's going to have legal impacts, social impacts, I think, that we haven't seen in a while. Like in some ways, in the way that we had a debate about cybersecurity and privacy and all the things we were trying to figure out. I think it's going to open up a lot of these issues, because what you see when you look at the folks that are making the decisions around that is like the county supervisor and her colleague who are saying, we have a decommissioned nuclear plant. We have economic development pressure to reopen this plant, but we're concerned about what it's going to do to our water quality. Oh, and by the way, how does this work? Like, how does a plant work? Like, is it dangerous? Like, is it going to melt down and kill everyone? Like, those are real questions that people have around this. So how does that relate back to here? I wanted to open up with that because this does bring up a number of issues. And I'll open up to the panel and maybe just give a 1 minute, except for Drew because he doesn't want to talk today. He's observing, is just to do a 1 minute overview of who you are. And let's just do name, title, and maybe what you're responsible for. And we'll start with Drew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, hello.
Can you turn it up a little bit, the mic?
I'll speak up. Yeah,
That's
hi
better.
everyone. My name is Drew Martin. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Fat Brands. We've got about 2,300 restaurants across 18 different brands. So we have the added challenge of having franchisees. Most of these restaurants are owned by independent business people who are managing a lot of things for us, including PCI compliance and security and network. So a little different nuance on that. And I was also CIO for other companies in San Diego, including Jack in the Box and then Sony. And I want to thank those guys over there, Christian and Erica, who kept me out of trouble at Sony, and everyone in the room who does such a good job on keeping these threats at bay that my job as the CIO is to cover a lot of different things, but I really lean on my cybersecurity team to keep me aware and honest and vigilant. So thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Raj?
Hi, my name is Arora, and I am currently working with US Bank. I'm a principal solution architect. I started as a web developer way back in 2000 and then moved on to the data. Now I'm more on to the cloud and AI.
Justine?
Phillips, the token lawyer on the panel. Any other lawyers in the room? Okay, permission to then just say anything. Nobody gonna question. I sit on global data and cyber leadership for our firm. We have about 6,500 attorneys, and I get to think about how data, cyber, AI-driven risk looks around the world and how to simplify it. And I manage both proactive and reactive cyber incidents.
Rosalia, and don't be afraid to use the other mic too. We can pass kind of that direction, and also make sure it works too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rosalia, Hajek. I'm the CISO for Topgolf Callaway brands, which is a blend of 5 or 6 different brands, including Travis Matthew, Ogio, Odyssey, and yes, I do get Callaway discounts if you want to come later. I oversee the cybersecurity globally, IT compliance, risk for the company. I also sit on CISO councils for venture capital firms like Greylock and Norvest, just trying to see what's in the industry and also. Yeah, overarchingly, excited to be here, and I'm excited to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gary? Yeah, try that. Yeah, try that one so we know it's live, and then pass this one back, and we'll kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks nice.
That one's loud.
Yeah. Hello.
So my name's Gary Hayslip. I'm the, I guess you say the executive in residence for cyber at Halcyon.ai, about 5 days into the job. Before that, I've got about 25, roughly plus years, CIO a couple times, CISO 5 times, just left SoftBank where I've spent the last 6 years doing cyber and also physical security and also due diligence and working with almost 600 portfolio companies around the world. Wide range of stuff, heavily involved in AI over the last 3 years. And then some of you know me as the CISO at the city of San Diego when I was their first CISO and stood up the program there, working for Mayor Faulkner. And then before that, I was a CISO with the U.S. Navy. So just wide range, both public and private industry. Multiple different types of threats, and issues. And then I've written, tons of articles and books with my, partner in crime, Matt, there on cyber as well. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. Several of the issues on Darin's handy dandy sheet here, we've been dealing with quite extensively. So, I'll have to be told to shut up because otherwise I'll start, rattling off and talking quite a long time about some of it. But anyhow, happy to be here.
Thanks, Gary. So I have a question for Justine that's very specific, but it kind of sets the framework for our tone of discussion here. Also, is Eric out and about and equipped with the mic yet? Eric? Are you Eric? Great. You're going to be passing around the mic? No worries. I was told that, yeah. Yeah. Mike said that you were going to do it, so I'm just trying to find out who. So sort that out and just let me know, okay? So, Justine, what happens when water coolant from the new liquid-cooled $6 million NVIDIA rack, and that's how they're working now, right? You've got multiple $6 million racks that are stacked next to each other in a data center, a football mile wide. What happens when the fluid or water leaks into that? And there's a leak detection system, and there's a signal that a leak occurred. Like, how is that going to get sorted out? Because that's a new kind of a problem.
He loves asking me data center questions because I felt so passionate about not talking to you about data centers.
This is a legal question.
This is an IoT security question. So first, let me ask the audience, raise your hand if you've been doing cyber for more than a year. Okay, keep your hand up if you've been doing cyber for more than 5 years. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years.
That's right.
Your voice's self, and nobody invited the lawyers to the party unless something went really wrong and you needed privilege. That has all changed, and the reason it has changed is the hypothetical Darin just mentioned, because the convergence of cybersecurity and national security has created a whole new species of law, and it is around critical infrastructure. It is securing the very core of what keeps us safe, and it's not about data. So there's new reporting obligations, new technical and organizational controls, and I hope we can get into some of that. And as to your hypothetical, I'll leave that to the experts as to the sensor's failure and the terrible consequences and the individual liability that can come for the technical teams, but also the corporate and the board for that type of failure.
Thanks, Justine. And for what it's worth, and I'm not being facetious, like I walked around and asked that question all week because early when I was there, someone brought that up and said, oh, this is an issue and nobody seems to know what to do, like in a very specific case. And so it just got me thinking, like, this is the Pandora's box that's been cracked open. Thank you. Eric. Eric? Hi, Eric. Thank you. So, this is a Pandora's box that's been cracked open. It's not the first time a Pandora's box has been cracked open in our industry, and that's what I want you to see. Like, there's a new wave coming. You guys are part of it. And I know that there's a lot of, old salty dogs in here, but be aware, like, there's a new set of threats coming that is unprecedented, what we've been cruising, right, through the last 10 years, because it's about to get real. I want to ask Raj a little bit about AI automation and cybersecurity. So with AI transforming both the defense and attack side, how are you integrating AI responsibility into your various programs? How are you kind of distinguishing who does what, who's on first, and how does that roll in between attack and defense?
So I think integrating AI responsibility into a cybersecurity program, it's a holistic strategy we have to adopt that manages both the benefit what we get from the AI and the risk associated what comes with the AI. Some of the key practices I would say we would like to do is that the robust governance, that's one of the key area we have to do. Ensuring that the securing the AI supply chain, because that's most important part of that, and continuous human oversight of the AI, because without human in the loop, AI can do the unexpected what you're not expecting out of it. So when it comes to the governance, we have to make sure that we have the enough guidelines how AI is used, who is responsible for the outcome of the AI, and how ethical considerations are being like fairness and transparencies are being measured for that. Cataloging all your AI system and making sure that what is the outcome of each AI system is, and it's explainable AI. That's most important, that you can explain that what AI has produced to you is explainable. The decision it has come, how it has arrived, you should have all those data points. Performing the regular assessment exercise, and when it comes to securing the AI supply chain, you need to make sure that you have security measure robust enough throughout the entire data pipeline, because data goes to the AI and the AI make the decision based on that. Using the techniques like adversarial training, where the models are intentionally exposed to the manipulated data to change the results. So that's another security practice to do that. So these are some of the key areas for us to look into that when it comes to the AI.
Thank you. And you had a follow-up, I think, or an add-on.
Yeah, and to add to that, like, data is so paramount for an AI ingestion. For us as InfoSec leaders, keeping your data sanitized, keeping it classified, really understanding where your data is and how it's being structured in your AI modeling is so important, because it ties in then to the legal aspect of it. As there's different layers of data being ingested, that means you need to have different parameters. The other thing to be really careful in terms of that is IT SOX implications. Really educating your leaders, especially your financial leaders, how that ties into, the relevance of testing for your SOX systems. I know that's, periphery of security, but also when you're talking about AI and governance, we are the torchbearers. We have to educate our peers in terms of the relevance of security, compliance, and privacy in that, especially if you're a global company. So for any AI, you have to start with the use case, really be crisp in terms of the what and the where, and then the data, to your point, in terms of how it's being used.
I'm going to jump in here as well. I came from a company that, when I was at SoftBank, that we were investing billions into AI. And so to us, it was mandatory that you had to use it. And so from as a CISO, you get dragged screaming into this thing where, you can be, hey, no, there's all these risks. And they're like, yeah, we don't care about that. So then you're like, okay,
Where have we heard that before?
yeah, and so then you start looking at, okay, how about we actually all get together? And what I mean by it was IT, it was, security, it was compliance, it was legal, it was risk, even finance. All the head departments got together, and we actually put a policy of what we were going to actually do with it. We weren't just going to do AI because of AI. There needed to be a business reason as to what we were going to do with it. And so that's establishing your guide rails. All right, this is our freeway. These are the rails on the freeway. This is what we're going to do. And then with that, with that policy, then, because that policy, now you're telling your staff and your employees, all right, we're going to use AI and it needs to be for these specific reasons with data, and this is the business reasons as to what we're allowed to use it for. From that, then you start doing training, with your employees. Then you go ahead and you stand up an AI committee made of people from the various departments, so that any type of new AI tools that come in get reviewed so that you can understand the business case, the data that's going to be used with it, especially if you're regulated. Is it going to be new data that's material that has to be reported, that now has to be stored for 7 years, that we weren't expecting to go ahead and have to store, but legal says we have to keep it? So you start putting that in place. So, again, you're putting all of these building blocks together for how you're going to manage it in-house. And then comes the security part of it. For those of you that are running teams, are your team members actually using it? My teams, we sat down and started building GPTs. We started coming up with use cases of what we were going to do with it. Some of my staff had never done JSON scripting before, but you need to be able to do it if you're going to be building queries and you're going to be building these GPTs and you want them to go ahead and do something. What you start learning is these GPTs, they're like toddlers. You're teaching them how to talk. Once, you've got a GPT and you built it and it's going outbound to go ahead and pull data back, what you don't realize is once that GPT is talking to another entity on the other side that may be outside of your organization, it assumes it can go ahead and freely talk and share data with whomever unless you tell it not to. So right away you could have data leakage inadvertently, not even know it. You've got to be able to be explicit in the prompts that you build as you build these things. And a lot of this comes into the business reasons as to why you're creating this and how you're going to use it internally. And this is what I was just learning with my team alone. And it's going to impact other things that you're going to do. It's going to impact how you recruit because there's new skill sets that you're going to need for your team. It's going to impact the tools that you have in your stack because every one of the vendors you have in your stack are now incorporating AI. So how do you use it? How do you see it? What type of new data is it creating because you want to keep legal happy? And then on top of, as you're doing all of these various things and putting it together, and you think you've got it, they come up with new stuff. Agentic AI agents that are thinking on their own, that are building workflows that can do some really crazy stuff. So now you got to look at how are you monitoring? Again, you come back to cyber, still cyber. You still got basic security controls. It may be AI, but it's still basic controls that you have to go ahead and manage. How are you going to monitor it? How are you going to observe what people are doing? How are you going to see the movement of data? How are you going to see permissions? What's going outbound? What new data is being brought back? Does this new data have intellectual property in it that you do not have rights to? And now all of a sudden you got to get legal involved because you've got a lawsuit. All of these, there's steps that you've got to be able to put together.
So, that's a great feedback and information on that because really you're defining a AI cybersecurity model of maturity and you're following that. Because, do you guys remember when all of our bosses decided that they wanted to have Mac computers in their Apple, as on our networks and how indignant we were? Well, now someone's coming and going, well, here's this thing you've been hearing about that's going to like eat the entire world, and like we want you to bring that into the environment, and it's not optional, it's mandatory. That's the scale, I think, at which we're working. And I want to ask Drew, because he works with a lot of outside entities as a franchisor, you know, what's it like when you've got to protect your brand and you've got multiple high-level, well-known brands, and you're working with franchisees who don't have the same level of knowledge? And I want to sort of open that up as a supply chain discussion, with people being a key part of the supply chain.
Yeah, it's a great question because you know, I think it's easy to say, well, these are just franchisees and we have no control over them, but you could say the same thing about your own employees. So it's always a question of education and influence and risk management. And I'd also say, just as it relates to AI, and I don't know about other folks, but to me, it's not that new, and we shouldn't change everything we're doing just because these 2 new letters came along. I started back in Accenture in New York, and I was the regional expert, this is in the 90s, for, wait for it, artificial intelligence. So certainly it's different now, but the same basic habits that we have around of understanding what the new types of threats are, but the governance is still the same, the partnering with legal is still the same, the education of employees and partners is still the same. So I think, you know, legally, on the one hand, with franchisees, they are responsible for their own PCI compliance. They have to answer their own attestation that they are PCI compliant for the level that they're at and file accordingly. So on the one hand, we're not accountable. On the other hand, if there were some kind of breach or some kind of data leak on privacy or anything else, that hurts the whole brand. So it's really a balancing act, but I don't look at it different to say, well, just because they're another entity, just like I would same thing with our vendors, just because there's a legal difference in them, we're all working towards the same goals, and we all have to influence each other and keep each other honest and have the same kind of frameworks to manage the risk. And so just that because they're a franchisee or a vendor or a partner or an employee, we still have to use the same influencing techniques.
Thanks, Drew. Eric, this is where you come in, because I want to open it up right now to questions, if anybody has any burning questions. I like to say this isn't TV, so it's not just us here. If I calculate right, we've got about 2,487 years of cybersecurity experience in the room. So, gentlemen here.
As that microphone
And then
gets
the
to
lady
them,
in the back
there's
there.
one thing I just want to mention, which is the way that data gets from data lakes into GPTs and models is through APIs. And we see a tremendous amount of focus right now in the threat actor community around API exploits. So if we're talking about securing API, we have to be thinking about that API infrastructure, who has access to it, and it does lead to supply chain. But it was just something that I think as a group, we are all thinking about, because threat actors are most certainly resilient and thinking about the easiest way in, and the rapid deployment of artificial intelligence is, you know, I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence, I'm afraid of natural stupidity, which is much more rampant than the deployment of AI. And if you are rapidly deploying AI and security is at the backdrop and not at the forefront, that is a massive problem. Laws aren't going to save you. You have to enable artificial intelligence with security being the fundamental principle on how you're going to set it up. And the great thing is at this conference, you guys get each other and you get to talk about ways to collaborate and win over hearts and minds in the business to put those guardrails that Gary talked about around it. Because if you haven't documented what Gary talked about, you're not in compliance with laws that require you, as you think about AI, to conduct risk assessments, number one. And number two, you're opening up the back doors into your infrastructure, freely, willingly, and paying for it, by the way.
Thanks. By a show of hands, who thinks that the human is still the weakest link compared to AI? Right, so there's some similarities. These things aren't going away. I'm sort of sharing this vision of the future, but it's going to be largely the same as well. Young lady in the back there has a question. I know, he had a question, but she's going first because Eric's there, so. Thank you. Can you stand up and just let us know who you are and your company?
For sure. My name is Gunjan Kale. I work at Medtronic. Question for Justine, given the illustrious career and experience she has behind her. I'm just curious about insights, Justine, that you might have in terms of the nature of the industry that an organization belongs to or the size of the organization, how does that influence being self-insured versus purchasing a cyber policy? Are there, like I'll give you the example of Medtronic as an example. High value data is what the organization deals with, right? So what trends do you see, in comparison, like self-insurance versus purchasing policies? And a bifold question, actually, a follow-up would be, how do you see AI influencing those decisions today?
Two-part question. Did you get it?
It was an 8-part question.
Yeah,
but
I know.
I got you, girl. I got
I
you.
heard 8 too, but
We are seeing a shift towards self-insurance, especially for large enterprises with umbrella coverage. I think that SMBs are still low-hanging fruit, and having some of those package policies, insurance rates are going up, the coverage is going down. But still with those umbrella policies, what we're seeing is quite a bit of control exercised by the insurance industry on decision-making when an incident happens. So I think that the expectation is that companies have cyber insurance. You get to broker a lot better rates with providers when you do have cyber insurance, but companies want autonomy. And the reality is the insurance companies are not going to make your infrastructure better when you have an incident. They're going to be very middle of the road on what they cover. Any insurance people, by the way, brokers in the room, I know Phil Dukoff, the USI, used to come to these things. Your good broker is worth your weight in gold, is somebody that really understands it. But great questions.
thanks for the question. Eric, can you just say your name and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, Adrian Sanabria.
Adrian, sorry, Eric.
The Defenders Initiative, which is just me, solo guy, independent, do a lot of podcasts and stuff. And also a lot of advisory work. And when I talk to companies about AI, Gary, you were talking about putting a governance process into place. But it seems like we're very much in a stage where, like, we're not sure what the business use case is yet, right? Like, we need to fool around with it some. We're still in this kind of experimentation phase, which doesn't give us a warm fuzzy, right? I want to use it everywhere. I don't know what it's going to be good for. So, like, what would you guys advise when you don't know what that business justification is going to be?
Yeah, I'll jump into this one because we ran into this quite a lot. We had offices in like multiple different countries, everywhere from China to Abu Dhabi to Brazil, and we found our employees in our 16 different offices who, we pretty much told them from the beginning, ChatGPT Enterprise was authorized, Perplexity was authorized, Google's, Gemini was authorized. So we had like about 5. So we gave them 5 that they could use, that they were authorized, and we told them, here we go, we got the enterprise versions, so we make sure that the data stayed in our bucket, try to control as much as possible. And then we turned them loose to be able to go ahead and do that. And we started doing was internally, we would do events where they would go ahead and do GPTs or they would build things, and then we would do like, we would have, AI Thursdays at lunch, and people would show their projects and they would show different stuff. And it was interesting what people would come up with where, procurement and contracts were coming up with one to go ahead and be able to review contracts, which is what legal jumped in and took it and hijacked it and added a bunch of other stuff because they found they could use it to review contracts, and days worth of stuff could be done in hours. And so you start coming up with these things with experimenting. And that's what we did was we gave them which ones were legal, but that's where security comes in because now you have to start monitoring because there's tons of crap that's so easy to sneak in because it's just an attachment on the browser. It's so easy to go ahead and, and hey, we got this new tool and it does this for us and it does that for us. And so we were constantly having to scan and catch these tools that weren't approved and have to bring them in through the process and explain to people, hey, you can't do these things. But in the process, we would find things like we found one called DeepL. I didn't even know what it was. They were starting to use it, and I'm like, why do we need this? But then all of a sudden I realized, hey, I can take things in Japanese and Chinese and translate it into English. So then when I'm looking at logs, like all of my Palo logs that are in like Chinese, I could go ahead and read them in English so I could see, okay, now I know what's going on with this user who happens to be in Shanghai. And so, but you don't know this until you get a chance to experiment. And so what we found was we had to go ahead and put the rules out there, give them what was approved, scan, so people knew that we were watching for what they would go ahead and do, make it fun so that they could go ahead and demo and show new things that they were doing. But at the same time, our parent company was also reminding people, oh, by the way, your bonus is tied into you if you actually use ChatGPT or use AI. If we see that you're not using it, expect your bonus at the end of the year to go ahead and adjust accordingly. And so everybody got active in coming up with ideas, and there was kind of competitions within the departments, so you add that little monetary piece in there too to make it interesting. But we had tons of projects, and just as I was leaving, we were starting to also look at how do you start developing agents, because we had a partnership with OpenAI. We were actually testing some of their agents, and that's where I really started getting worried from a security standpoint because of how these things can be operating almost as a digital employee. And you really need to understand the level of access and how and what these things are doing with data. And the security, unfortunately, the security community, the tools are just now being built to allow you to start seeing these things now. And so in some ways I feel like we're playing catch up because the technology is moving so fast. And again, you have to be able to inventory, you have to be able to scan and monitor, you have to be able to enforce. And so, I mean, we just started doing it in small pieces and just worked on it from there.
Drew has a follow-up, and then Rosalia, maybe you have a comment as well.
I was just going to say, I think that's incredibly innovative and forward-thinking, and it makes sense to come from a company that was very innovative and forward-thinking. What I think happens more typically in companies is that no one comes and says, hey, I want to do an AI project. It seeps into everything that people are doing. It's just another productivity tool.
It's like open source software.
Yeah, or it's like saying years ago, hey, I'm doing an internet project. Like, no, I'm using a browser and internet connectivity to get things done more efficiently. So in the same way, AI. So, Salesforce comes to it and says, oh, we've got Agentforce, and we think we have a use case you can try out. Our point-of-sale vendor says, hey, we can start recommending, personalized choices based on our new AI engine. So every vendor's talking about AI. And then you have individual users who are saying, hey, I discovered I can use ChatGPT and Excel. And so they're doing some things like that. So it's not, I think there's some approaches if you're a more innovative company where they're really incentivizing people through bonuses and everything else, saying we're leaning in on AI. And then there's a lot of other companies that are maybe fast followers or maybe slow followers or laggards, but AI is coming. So I think you have to approach it different ways. But I think it's better to expect that you have to understand how it's seeping into every initiative that you do in digital transformation or technology. There's some element of AI, and so how do you start creating some governance and awareness and education and with all the right parties? I think it's always a sign something's not mature when you do a task force or you assign a czar. It means you really haven't figured out how to make it part of your company. So how do you get from that kind of gang tackling, what are we going to do with this topic, to, hey, we have a way of doing this and leveraging it across every function and every project.
As the AI arms race is so accelerating in the United States, a few guardrails and areas to just be extra cautious on. One is automated decision-making technology, where instead of having humans make decisions, you're having machines make decisions. That is especially going to be problematic for HR, recruiting platforms. So succession planning, monitoring, hiring, sorting resumes, weeding people out, and the disparate impact. That is already regulated in many jurisdictions and will be an issue. Another hotspot is source code. If you want to protect your trade secrets, you should be hyper careful about where you allow those to be hosted and what systems you put those in. So those are just a couple hotspot guardrails that you might think about.
Thank you. You had a comment?
Yeah, and in case you just have to begin, you look at your revenue generating arms and, really have crisp use cases there to kind of drive that within the business. Because not many companies have enterprise AI. Some of them, have a lot of tech debt, so that's where you could start. And as security professionals, my mantra is yes and. So yes to whatever they are asking and socializing the need of controls, privacy, and all that good stuff. So,
Who has the next question? Mike's coming to you. here, and then the gentleman in the purple shirt there. Hi, can you tell us your name and what you do?
Hello, my name is Tahar. This question is for Justine, excuse me. When it comes to the board, and thank you for that, because when it comes to insider threat projects and programs, General Counsel is always to my left. CFO is on my right. When it comes to the SEC, the 8K and the 10K when it comes to materiality. And I know we've been having a very technical conversation, but some of us like myself who sit at corporate boards as their advisor, there's a lot going on with materiality when it comes to cybersecurity. There's a lot of ambiguity when it comes to AI and ethics, which is also a security. I'm curious from your perspective, how do we stay abreast to what the SEC is mandating, what you find materiality when it comes to AI on the intersection of cybersecurity?
So thank you for those wonderful questions and reminders that the laws have changed, particularly in the last administration, changed a lot around SEC enforcement. I know we heard a lot about CISOs being named individually, potential for criminal liability, which got the CISO community's attention. So specifically on your question on materiality, the time to evaluate is not when you're having an incident. Tabletop it. Have a playbook. And that is a whole lot of fun because there's many considerations that go into materiality. Within an 8K filing, there's mandatory filing under the new SEC rules, under 1.05. That is going to be pretty rare. And then once you get to that decision, you may have to tell law enforcement because your vulnerability, if you're a tech company, could create vulnerabilities and national security issues for other companies. So it's a pretty complex analysis that can't be done on the fly. You want to have a very good, I know my friend Matt Stamper is a fanatic about the Checklist Manifesto and Atul Gawande's book, which is a fabulous resource. Having a playbook that talks about materiality. The other thing I've been spending a lot of time the last couple years since the SEC rules went into effect is one, researching. What do those 8Ks say? What don't they say? And what do the 10Ks say? And what don't they say? And evaluating that using, of course, AI-enabled tools. But the other thing is really paying attention to the new administration. I'm not so worried about SEC filings for U.S. headquartered companies. I am worried about my Chinese clients. I am worried about my clients outside the United States who have been deemed to be a country of concern. I do think that the SEC enforcement activities and certainly the DOJ enforcement activities under Executive Order 14117, a new data localization law for the United States, we've never had one before, that has criminal liability for violating it. Who is in the best position to hold accountable? We know that the government loves to hold the information security professionals accountable for failing to secure data from countries of concern. So that piece of it, I worry a lot about. And I think we should spend some time thinking about who has access to certain types of data, making sure you're compliant, and making sure you're watching the new administration carefully as to how it's going to impact your supply chain and also your organization.
Thank you for your question. Eric, this gentleman here in the purple shirt has a question, and while you're headed there, I want to ask Raj a little bit about, as organizations are continuing to do hybrid work coming out of COVID, what are some of the policies, procedures, and technologies that you're leveraging to ensure access control and security across multiple clouds? Because I'm sure you're dealing with a multiple cloud environment with lots of folks working in and out of the office.
Sure. I think this got more prominence after COVID, right? When we start seeing that the remote work started happening, and that brings this security more in caution. So the first thing is about that, organization or mostly hybrid, different kind of clouds we are using, and managing the identity and access and data protection across these 3 different areas gives a different challenge. So we need to adopt a robust and adaptive approach, primarily built on a zero trust framework where every person, device, or the location is goes through that the trust but verify principle. Some of the key strategy I can think is that operate under the principle of never trust, as I mentioned, and centralize the identity governance, because if you are running across different clouds and some of your users are remote, some of the users are in office, how do you run through that, all of that? Because if you are not using a single IAM solution, then it's going to cause problem in data sprawl and password sprawl things. Other thing is that adopting the federated authentication, like you have 10 different applications from different vendors, and you want to make sure that you have a good user experience and it goes through that the single sign-on process. So it's all federated. You can control, you can monitor those data, who is coming in and out of the system. And of course, it has their own different challenges of the securities. What other I can think is that multi-factor authentication, which we are seeing each and every time, when we go and log into that systems. And other thing which I have not seen much, but if you can couple your the IAM system with the human resource system, that way, right? If a person is onboarding, when he's onboarding, the whole life cycle from onboarding to moving out of the organization, it should be go through one single place, and that is something I don't see in many organizations, but that's a very ideal state of the maturity of the Zero Trust framework.
Thanks, Raj. Gentleman in the purple shirt, you have the floor for a question.
Yeah, it's a very basic question I'm going back to here. We've been throwing around the term, Neil from Data Privacy for Dexcom. We've been throwing around the term AI. And a lot of times I see people don't understand what that actually means, even in the businesses, and there are companies out there they've perpetuated this, where, for example, one company I know about, or one software application, uses, last year their button was called search. This year the button's called AI. But I also see everybody using a nail and hammer approach to AI, where it's like they're not really, if you look at the EU AI Data Act, or AI Act, sorry, they talk about risk levels. But I also see a lot of organizations just, throwing the same procedures and processes regardless of whether it's just a search button or it's something like a generative AI. So
What is AI to you? Like, how would you describe it?
Well, that's the thing, is, you look at the different definitions. I actually looked at one the other day, it was either ISO or one of the others, and reading the definition, I can interpret a spreadsheet as being AI. It's that extreme. I look at AI as artificial intelligence, where it truly is something at the high level of, generative AI. That is where, I see AI being. AI, we've had predictive analytics for years. I mean, these things have been around for years, but we're throwing the AI label on it. And I'm wondering how you guys are dealing with that issue within the different organizations out there, how people are defining AI.
I'll take this one on a little bit and make a comment and just say that, for me, it's like when you're querying the AI, like a la search engine button, which has now become AI search button, and we literally did that move you said, but there is certainly something different under the hood for global search through AI for search, let's say Google data versus AI. I understand that it's a lot of the same data, but I think what AI is doing is adding many new algorithms, and I think the breadth of data is increasing. But to your point, like in some ways we do get to make up the definitions and sort of creating the box out of which we're working out of to say here's our working definition of AI as we know it today. Because certainly you see AI as a search, then you see what's happening right now, AI as workflow, and then I think comes next is AI as automation, right? And that's what that automation is happening now in banking and other places. And it's all those algorithms that are making that up. So we're on sort of the same trajectory. In some ways, the definitions do blur. Who has a comment on that? Drew?
I was just going to say, again, I think my simple definition is just automation on steroids. You know, you could go and Google everything and read it and then come up with the same answer that Gemini would or ChatGPT. And across the organization, it's still, everyone's trying to leverage AI to do automation, to do their job easier. Like agentic AI is just doing that. So you still have to have the guardrails in place. You still have to have the humans accountable. You can't let it, you know, run away and make decisions that you are still accountable for without having some oversight of that. So to me, it's very simplified if you just say it's automation, again, across all projects, across all initiatives, across every job, there's opportunity to automate it. And we still have to do the same basic things about awareness and governance and human accountability. And humans can be stupid, so we still have to, that hasn't changed either. So that's my simple way of thinking of it.
Justine has a comment, but I just want to ask by show of hands, and I see your question there, sir. Who here is using AI, whatever that looks like for you by your definition, on a regular basis? And I would define regular as daily, weekly. So what do you think that's about, 2/3 of the room? That's changed, you know. I've done a few of these, and I would say that it was 20-30%. It depends on how many defense people are in the audience, but you know, certainly. And I remember, by the way, when we were talking, I would ask the question: has anyone here like had identity theft, right? Like 15 years ago? So these things do, you know, evolve over time. Justine.
If you're looking for a resource for standardized definitions and a framework, NIST AI framework has been designated by the new White House AI project plan as going to be that leading global resource for what is AI. And as quick as we define these terms, new types of AI is born. You know, we were talking about generative AI last week, and now we're talking about agentic AI, and it's different requirements legally, but also from a practical perspective.
And that report came out, that NIST report, I believe it was July 2024, so you can find it. Gentleman in the back, I believe in the black shirt. Did you have a question? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
here, thank you.
I just want to put one more comment. Just imagine that, you know, the market capitalization of the stock market for the AI related was 3% 5 years back. Today it is 17% of the entire, you know, market capitalization. So within 5 years, it has gone more than 5 times. So that's the pace, staggering pace we are, you know, looking at that.
Thank you. Question? There. Hey, Steve. Here. Who's got the mic, I guess, is the question. Okay, thank you. Just share your name and what you do.
I'm Roman Diaz, and I'm with Touchstone Compliance. And I liked what Gary said about how governance, putting together a governance team to roll out AI is really critical and important, and that you involve heads of the different departments like legal and HR and whatever in the thing. But I think that the success of that team, though, relies on how well the members of that team are trained or understand the technology. So I'm curious as to what successful strategies have been employed to get that training in place so they can be effective as a governance team.
Who wants to field that? Thank you.
Yeah, I think as legal professionals, you know, like Justine, and for us as InfoSec, you know, there's always a constant cycle of learning. I call myself an eternal learner, so every day, you know, you learn something new. So for the people in that governance council, to your point, they need to have that depth, and if not them going and searching for themselves, some kind of training in terms of, you know, outside team members coming in. You know, I've seen companies kind of have regular monthly check-ins in terms of, you know, different topics for InfoSec, maybe the new DSPM stuff, you know, like there's always new concepts coming in. One has to be very relevant to kind of be part of these level of conversations. And also the basis of all of this is a strong policy as well. So that's where, you know, it's a need, not a want of certain guardrails. So that has to be put in place too. So there is some level of consequence. Because if there's no policy, then there's nothing to kind of hold folks accountable to. So there is some level of guardrails for that governance to work as well.
And you were asking about the training piece. What we started doing was we started doing lunch and learns, where people could go ahead and show projects. People could go ahead and talk about some of the latest things that they were seeing within the Gen AI and the Gentic AI space. We invited OpenAI and Anthropic and Google to come over and talk about specific things that they were working on as well. We went ahead and our last tabletop exercise we actually did an AI one, where what we did was basically, a individual, an employee went ahead and snuck in a Gen AI tool that they were using, and data unfortunately got funneled outside the organization, and some of that data was considered to be financial related data, and that data got loose on Reddit, and the next thing you know, we had third-party attorneys contact. That was our tabletop, and we included all the various departments and the executive team and board members, so they could see, okay, if this goes south, this is what it's going to look like. And we were kind of winging it as we went, and we got the whole scenario from ChatGPT. We asked ChatGPT to give us a tabletop exercise, that involved AI. And that's what it was like, one of our employees snuck in a third-party app, and unfortunately, data got out that shouldn't have got out, and it got released to the press. And it was interesting how it snowballed, and even legal had a good time with it, because we started throwing in things. Oh, some of this data is in one of our offices in Brazil, and Brazil's got a data privacy law. How are we going to handle that? Oh, we've got to deal with third-party attorneys in Brazil, And it was, I have to admit, it made a lot of people think what we were going to do. And it was just, so you do those kind of things where you do the trainings, and then you also make sure the security team as well is doing some type of training, and you don't do it behind closed doors. You get everybody involved. Because I can guarantee you, when you do have an incident like this involving AI, it's not, the blast radius is going to be freaking stupid, and it's going to be outside the organization, and it's going to involve third party. So you might as well go ahead and get everybody involved. And we actually went through and actually wrote a whole new playbook to go with our incident response, policy that we had, because we realized this was something new that we had never seen before, and we were actually updating it when I left. My deputy was on how we were going to deal with agents as well and agentic workflows. Again, these are new things that you're going to have to change. Even the legal team and compliance got together and had to rechange our policy on data, on managing data, and where it was accessed and how it was managed and everything, because we had to start incorporating the AI piece, as well, because again, it changes, because you're going to be creating new data products and new things that you hadn't thought of before. And so, again, you got to do that training, but don't keep it limited, and you definitely have to make it visible and get everybody involved.
Gary, hold on to the mic, because I have a question for you. I want to note that even legal had fun. I just want you to be aware of that. Steve, we have a question. Steve, you have a question I'm going to get to next. But Gary, I want to ask you, you and I had lunch at RSA this year, and you put in front of me, as part of our conversation, a study that you had seen that was put together by a group of high-level researchers at OpenAI and Google. And can you share a little bit about the study and the outcome? The idea was AI is amongst us, and it has these various potential results. And I was a little shocked by the timing of it, and I just want to know if you've changed your viewpoint of that yet. Do you remember the study we talked about?
I have no idea.
It was a 2027 study that talked about two outcomes for AI. Either the AI would, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but either the AI would, at the point, and I think it was 2027, the AI would have us believe that we are in charge, but it's in charge, or like we'd be eliminated as a species. It was
actually a bunch of researchers and it's based on this 2027 AI website, and they'd done a bunch of research on AI and how fast it's growing, and how basically you've now got agents policing other agents. And there's big discussions already about, in security teams, if you're going to be using, because about a third of your team within the next couple of years is going to be some type of agentic, AI solution that's going to be doing stuff for you. And you're probably going to have to use AI to police that AI, because they're going to be making decisions so fast at machine speed. And And so they had done research on this, and they basically had talked about how just the explosion, you've pretty much got two different outcomes. And they were even projecting out to 2032 how fast these things were going to progress, and even in the 2028 election, how both sides are going to be using it, from all kinds of just crap that they're going to be spewing, I'm pretty sure, about each other, and how they're going to be using AI to tune the message and try to get voters and stuff. And the discussion was about, and it was scary because, it's either going to get very, very dark, where AI, pretty much takes over and gets rid of humans because we're in the way, or it's even on the good side, where you think, okay, hey, AI is not killing us. Actually, AI is still running behind the scenes. It's just letting us think we're in charge, and it was really interesting stuff. And, I would definitely, if you look at 2027 AI, I think it's like 2027 AI.org or something like that.
Study research.
But it's scary either way you go at it. And the things that they're talking about, the progression of how fast it's moving and the research that's being done, you start reading it and you're like, yeah, they've done this, they've done this, they've done this. It's almost like a check sheet. And you're just like, this is pretty frightening, and it is. I mean, and I was just, reading through it and just looking at, where it's going. And, and as a CISO, you always kind of look at the dark way things, go, because we're all paranoid, and, and again, you're like, okay, well, this is interesting because this stuff's going to be making decisions so fast, and you hope as a human, you've got something in there to be able to stop things so that you could go ahead and control stuff. Anyhow, but that's what that was about.
I appreciate it.
I'm an AI optimist.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, so there's always the dystopian outcome, right? Like, that's what we see. It doesn't need to be that way. But I think what's worth noting is how they shape the narrative around it, because I thought that was very interesting. It was a very pragmatic set of a layout of how it would go. And you do see some of the things there that we see now, which is probably what they base it on. But I just encourage you to take a look at it because, look, we've been told to be scared for 20 years now, right? So we're sort of over all that nonsense. But look, we do need to be ahead, and we do need to let our organizations know what to look for. Steve, did you have a quick question? Oh, yeah, because we got like 1 minute left. So can we do one last one? Last question, and we'll do like a 30-second wrap-up down the panel. Yeah, after Steve. As soon as Steve goes short, which he usually doesn't. So
this is Steve Hayslip, UCSD. This is for Justine on automated decision-making. Have you seen any cases that do the full strength of liability, and what can a company do now, audits, whatever, to mitigate their full liability?
So ADMT technology is thriving in China. Asia is years ahead of where we are because they have enabled and implemented it. So the agentic AI that we're seeing there, they're diagnosing, they're making medical decisions, the infrastructure is there, the laws are localized, but it's there. In here, I think it's pretty nascent. It's pretty early days. I think there's still human, as Raj mentioned, there's still that level of human review intercepting between the machines making decisions and us. And I think the last question is this beautiful lady in the front.
Finish up here.
I'm coming.
Thank you. Just let us know your name and what you do.
Hi, my name is Lucy Maxwell. I work for Stepstone. It's a global private equity management firm. I do IT risk for them. So based on the latest release of unemployment rates in the U.S. in August 2025, it has increased to 4.3, and which is concerning, right? Only 22,000 new employees were released this year. And now with the growth of AI and the fear of replacing human beings' jobs and the concern of the economy, since you just mentioned, Justine, that you are very positive about AI, or any of you in the panel, please tell us, what advice do you have for our kids who are getting ready to go into college and they prepare for the future?
That's a perfect futuristic wrap-up question. Thank you. Do we want to why don't we do this and just kind of go down the line and do like 20 seconds and we'll wrap up.
I think what everyone says on AI with jobs is that, you know, your job won't be eliminated by AI, but it might be taken by someone who knows how to use AI to do that job. That's kind of what a lot of people are saying about that. And I believe in Schumpeterian creative destruction, that there's always jobs that need to be, when they're automated on steroids, that'll create new opportunities too. And I think the real challenge is the pace of change might be different than anything we saw during the Industrial Revolution or other kind of times in history. So I think it's still for the kids in universities, how do you learn to use AI to do that thing that you're going to be passionate about as a career, and don't necessarily shy away from it, because I think, as I said earlier, AI is going to affect every job in different ways. So just still follow your passion would be my advice to my kids, and but also understand how you can use AI and how that will affect that career choice.
Thanks. Drew, Raj?
I would say it's just another productivity tool and another skill to add, because it's most essential now. I mean, I just look at it as that, you know, if I'm doing Excel, how I used to do Excel 2 years back, and now I'm more productive on that. How I'm going to generate the notes out of any meeting, which I used to find it very hard, who said what and all that. It's very helpful on that. So it's a productivity tool. It's additional skill, and you need to adopt that.
Thanks, Raj. Justine?
My advice to my 17, 19, and 22-year-old kids is the same advice I'll share with this audience. It's the Darwinian effect. It's not the smartest, it's not the strongest, it's not the prettiest, it's not the tallest that are going to survive. It is those most adaptable to change. And AI is just an accelerator for growth and change. And the sooner you get on board and really understand its benefits, its weaknesses, the more valuable you will be in your position and in your future.
Thank you. Rosalia?
So my first job as an intern was filing papers, 20, 25 years ago. And now interns will have the joy of not getting gazillion paper cuts. Everything is now, online and things like that. In the next few years, internships, the very first level, would be different with AI being present. The first level jobs of, just processing and things like that, they will still be first level entry jobs, but they will be at a much higher level in your IC level. So I think AI will just help automate, and your first entry-level jobs will be a little bit more higher in terms of knowledge, competency, but you will still need an entry-level job. You will still need AI plus the human element, because AI has hallucinations. At the bottom of it is neural networks, it's lattices. So we are still not there from just letting it take the reins. So it's very prevalent, and I think it will just help us move forward. For the future generations, how I mentor people and my kids are use it, right? So my 10-year-old has his own GPTs creating images and things like that. Just making sure they understand how they can use it, how are they interfacing with it. So you don't have to be a technology person at that point. It's more about critical thinking, logic. How can you solve a problem? There is a solution. AI is providing you that. You just have to find a way through it. So just getting the future generations to kind of see it as a way to really succeed. And of course, with me being paranoid, have the guardrails, have all the, proper decisioning and laws and things like that. But it will help the grunt work. The definition of an intern or the definition of an entry-level person will be very different. But they will, those people will still exist.
Gary.
I guess I'm the last one here. I can tell you from the student, from the children point of view, my youngest son right now, software developer over at Cubic, he's doing his master's in data science at UCSD. And we sat down over this last year looking at his courses, and I had him totally change half his courses, and he's doing classes in AI and in natural language processing and all these different pieces, because he sees where it's going, and I basically sat down and helped him to project out where he wants to be. And, and it's the same thing. I'm mentoring 4 different CISOs right now, and all of us are having discussions about the use of AI. I don't think it's, in the cybersecurity industry, Those of us, as we move up into leadership positions, and those of us that are managing teams, our jobs aren't going to go away, but they're just going to be different. And I think those that will actually get employed, those that actually will move into leadership positions, will be those that are comfortable with this technology, comfortable with being able to make decisions quicker, with larger ranging business impacts, being able to go ahead and take large amounts of data and being able to, to build the GPT or be able to build the model, to go through that data, to find unique things that you need to make the case before the board and have that data to back up, this is why we need to do this and this is why I need to do budget. And so it's just, and so what I'm recommending and what I'm doing it myself, is you got to be comfortable with building these things. You got to be comfortable with being a hacker and going ahead and playing with these models and breaking things and figuring out how they work, and understanding, okay, this is how I can use it internally within the business. This is how I can use it with my teams. These are things I need to be aware of that employees are doing that my teams need to watch for, to make sure they stay within the guardrails, that they're using data correctly, and then you're recommending, and then it also impacts who you hire. Because, I start asking when I'm hiring somebody, do they have the basic skills that I need for cyber? Do they also know how to do Python and do scripting and stuff? And then the next thing I'm asking is, what GPT, what projects are you doing at home? Because what I'm looking for is, are you already thinking future-wise ahead that these things are going to be in the stack, these things are going to be within the business, and I need to understand them and be comfortable with them and be comfortable using them? Because, those of us, those CISOs that are going to be definitely, I've got about another 10 years before I retire and just do board work and just work with startups. And I'll probably still be advising and working with CISOs until I die, because I love the field. But I'm finding a lot of the new CISOs that are coming up behind me that I'm talking to, they're all looking at, how do I use it now, and where should I be at in 5 years with it? What do I need to be doing now to be ready for that? And that's how you prepare yourself. Don't be afraid of it. Start using it. You're going to break things, and just go with it.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, everybody. Join me in thanking our panelists. The panelists will stick around. I think the bar may still be open, and we appreciate you coming here. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kim. All right. Thank you, everybody.